we got the first fight of the evening. Igor da Silva taking on Jhonata Silva. Two Silvas, they're going against each other. It's in the flyweight division. You know it's going to be fast-paced action. Igor da Silva, from what I did see in the limited tape, he seems like a dangerous finisher. He was able to get a finish on the ground via front headlock choke in one of the fights I watched. And in the other fight, he looked like he had dangerous power on the feet. He stalked his opponent constantly. The guy was trying to do jumping, standing guard pulls and all this stuff, and he wasn't really able to get a hold of him. He seems very athletic, strong, good balance. And then on the feet, he was doing a lot of damage. So for me, he seems like a very good athlete here. But Jhonata Silva also showed he could deal with some adversity, was taken down many times in the one fight I watched, and he was able to get back to his feet. He was able to deal some damage in the shots that he had on the feet. And then by round 3, the other guy had wrestled himself completely into a hole. So how do you feel about this matchup? Do you feel like, there's an edge in either way? And I'm going to look at the odds here because guys, I come in blind to this show each and every week. I have not even looked at the odds once. So I don't know who's favored. I don't know who the dog is. I'm going to pull up the odds right now so we can have an even more in-depth conversation. But Gordo, kick us off, brother. What do you got?
Who do you think should be favored off your one fight of tape? That's a fun question.
I would think, well, what I would say is I would think Igor da Silva would be favored because he looked more dominant in the fights that I was watching, whereas the other guy was kind of getting that come from behind win. That would be my impression. But again, I watched about 4 fights total from these guys.
That's fair, man. It's always interesting to see what you expect your friends to see the line as in, because you know what, me, someone who does my tape prior weeks, sees the line open, sees the line move. It's interesting to see what people's reactions are to the way the line's adjusted, right? Because by the time that Liam is looking at these lines, you would think that the market should have corrected itself. The line move should have completed. And it's interesting to see a sharp man like Liam react to these lines. Now, this one here, full disclosure, if you bet on someone named Silva, you should win. Unless Mike Bell is judging, then you should bet a draw. But it is going to be a fun fight here nonetheless. You have to think just based off of the metrics here, based off of just topology, looking at these fighters, you have a young 20-year-old prospect, 7-0, undefeated, fighting out of a shoot the box style camp here, who looks to be someone that they're trying to promote because he's taken on this guy who, although he's only 26 on the other side, he's only fought once in the last 4 years. You have to think that Igor is the side that they're really trying to promote here, someone who has been the more active fighter, someone who's going to be the more aggressive and, let's say, more polished prize fighter here, this side of things. But truly, this guy is still green. He's 20 years old. There's a lot of things you still have to see improve from him. And although he does show some really good ground tendencies, his striking leaves a lot to be desired for me. I think although he has decent aggression, he does show decent durability. I think that he can be hit. I think he lacks a lot of the technicality you like to see from experience. But considering how young he is and how I think it's been a year since his last fight, and he should be making these improvements. He does seem like the A side to me in this matchup. Flip side of things, when you have Jhonata Silva here, the big red flag is that lack of competition, but still young in his own right, 26 years old. And I do think he has a decent fundamental skill set behind him, but he lacks that raw athleticism. He lacks that ability to go out there and win the physicality battle against someone who is only just 20, but I think will have the advantage here in Igor. So to me, the guy winning most of the ground exchange, winning most of the clinch battles, and being the more physical fighter of the two is going to be Igor. And we add in the fact that he should be the A side of this matchup, being the younger prospect, being more active. And I think the line sits about right where it should. I do agree with the favorite line. And I will say before I continue talking here, because you know how much I love to talk, we do have ourselves a ton of favorites on this one, right? We have minus 250s, I don't think we have any favorite below minus 200 here. So it's going to be up to us to find which ones are going to be the parlay busters, which ones are going to stand out here. And unfortunate for me to get the night started, I am taking the favorite. Won't be the case the entire time. I do have some dogs I'm looking at, but I am taking Igor here. I do think he wins this fight at a pretty high clip, being the A side here. Although I will say he is nowhere near a lock to do that just because of his raw inexperience due to his lack of technical strike in there, but he should be the A side here.
I feel you, brother. I definitely feel you on that. I think that when you look at this fight on paper, I think that's how a lot of people are going to break it down, right? You got a guy who just looks like the more explosive guy. That's a guy that just sells a little bit easier. You know what I'm saying? Whereas the last guy, kind of the comeback performance, like I mentioned, maybe that'll steer some people away. You definitely saw some visuals that would be a touch concerning, but you're getting that plus money return as well on that side. So I'm curious, what did this one open up at? Do you know, Gordo, off the top of your head? If not, I'll pull it up real quick. Minus 135. Yep. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Pierce, please. Let us know. And by the way, did you crush that? Is that why it doesn't exist anymore?
Nah, I missed that one, but I definitely would have played that. But seeing the line right now, it's minus 210 for Igor's. I'll call him Severino because that's his Brazilian name. Severino versus Silva. But I think it's accurate. I wrote in my notes before the odds came out, I would line Igor maybe minus 225, and that's about where it's at right now. So I'm not going to force a bet. And I don't know. I honestly, at this point, I think it's either dog or pass, but more so than not, it's a pass. Just because when you look at Igor, well, he is 20 years old. He's training at the shoot box, not the Diego Lima. I think it's Emilio is the camp, and he's training with like Melt Costa, Mercilli Alves, who's in Bellator doing his thing. He's definitely the guy being brought in, like Gordon said. But I do have my issues with his striking defense. I'm not a big fan of it. I saw him in the Lucas Kenner fight. He got hurt to the body early. He looked like he was about to quit for a second, but he showed some heart. And that other dude shot a takedown, which probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. And I don't know, Jhonata Silva, yeah, he had a long layoff, but this Stipe Breakchick guy for Cage Warriors, he's a good fighter. He's a solid regional scene guy. And my issue with Jhonata is his paper hips. He does struggle a lot with the takedown defense. And you look at Igor, he's looking for takedowns. But I will say with Igor, he does kind of seem to go submission over position. I've seen him jump guillotines, leg locks. So it just comes down to if Igor is going to fight smart because he is 20 years old. Maybe he's a little green. He could be bound to make mistakes. But another thing I'll note, because I don't think Gordon touched on it, Jhonata actually used to fight at 115 in Brazil. And this is at 125 pounds. We saw in Jhonata, I think he weighed in 125 and a half. So I did notice a size advantage for Igor at the face-offs today, but I guess I didn't really touch on Jhonata. I like his striking, man. He's got good pull counters, and if it stays on the feet, I think Igor is hittable, and Jhonata could maybe weasel a decision. So I wouldn't force a play at these odds because Jhonata, maybe it's a good live bet spot because Igor is front-loaded with a lot of his finishes. And Jhonata, he seems to build late, especially in the Stipe fight. Like he had trouble with the takedowns early, but as the fight got extended, he did a good job finding his range, making his reads. He's got a good high kick. But I'll also add one more thing for Jhonata. If y'all caught the fight, I think it was against Cedar Altis. He got dropped so bad with a head kick. He literally got knocked out cold and somehow survived that fight. I just thought that was hilarious to see. So who knows? Maybe Jhonata's a tad chinny, but I'm not going to force a play on Igor at these odds, man. I think it's dog or pass, but like I said, I'm probably going to pass.
Yeah, and you did mention that there. I think I was too busy making Mike Bell jokes to really give out a prediction for this one, but he is a smaller guy. I think in previous bouts too at flyweight, he's only weighing in at 123, 122 for these fights. Smaller dude, and I think in this matchup like this, that yeah, you mentioned some decent pull counter, some decent ability to contend in the feet. This is one where I think there is an advantage on the mat for the younger, larger fighter in Igor here if he decides to take it there. Being younger, being inexperienced, we don't know if he will because he is pretty confident in a stand up there, for better or for worse, which is why the fear is there. But I think the path of least resistance is on the ground if he's able to go there. And due to that, let's say advantage in the size and in the ground, I think that makes up for the close fight on the feet there. So we do have ourselves a favor that I like.
I'm with you there, brother. From the early impressions, that's what I was seeing as well. Do you guys have any thoughts on the over 1.5 here for our guy Mushroom? I honestly don't love it, just because it seems like if the guy who's favored to win is like, pretty predicated on first round finishes, it depends on the price, I suppose. I don't even know what it's priced. So let me go check that before I speak out of my hat.
It's
Minus
minus 150. Yeah, it's minus 150 in the over 7.5 minutes. And I guess it's just one of these fights where you could see it playing out either way. Like Pierce mentioned, this Igor kid is submission over position. He will jump guillotine. He will go out there and look for these transitions, which I think he could have success in doing so. But at the same time, it's a big risky move because he could end up putting himself in a wrong position that way. He could end up overextending himself and all this kind of stuff. I think that there are better plays on the slate because of the risk of the finish possibilities early on from both fighters. But that's just me. I don't know if Pierce has a better angle on it.
I honestly, it's not a horrible price. We got to remember here it's flyweights, and Igor's getting finishes, but it's over these guys in the Brazilian regional scene that aren't the best. They're kind of flaky, and I don't think Jhonata's a fish off his back. He does get taken down a lot, but he seems really aware. He's good at retaining his guard. And I think the under 1.5 is solely predicated on Igor getting a finish because I don't think Jhonata has any early finishing upside. So I don't mind it. Minus 150. Not too bad for flyweights.
Yeah, and especially a lot of times in the flyweight division, it's a 2.5. So at a 1.5, to just see a slightly chalked over, it almost makes me feel like it's a trap. But when I look at it on paper, it just feels to me like the only thing that I would consider betting on a fight like this, given the current odds, and again, we're dealing with offshores, U.S. domestic books are all over the place in terms of how they open these things up at times. But I'm looking at the sub at plus 400. I don't think that that's the worst look because I do feel like he's a guy that could club and sub as well. To your point, Pierce, about a guy who's pretty tough, basically career on the line. He might not go out easy if you hit him with some strikes, but what do I always say? There's no being a tough guy about a choke. You just go to sleep. So that's what I would prefer to see from him here. And the young man, you guys were saying submission over position. Hey, at plus 400, let's find out. Let's find out, brother.
Dude, I'm surprised. I'm surprised they're favoring the KO over the submission. That caught my eye. I didn't make a play on it, but I mean, you look at his record, he's got it's about 50-50 on the subs, but he's definitely a grappler first, and that's probably how he's going to approach this. So plus 400, it should be. I feel like they should be flipped, so that's not a bad play.
I like it, my man. So there we have it. Some consensus, on the favorite here, but also a little bit price prohibitive. This is the Contender Series, right? And we've also seen it, young kids, it could be a blessing and a curse, right? Sometimes they come in and they're just not ready for the big moment. We've seen that with guys like Smotrisky, a few guys where like they just come in and the moment almost gets the better of them. So I think it'd be interesting to see how this plays out long term, but I feel like you got to favor the younger kid here to get the job done. It's just, do you want to pay this price?